Chris, welcome. You're live. Episode number 4. How's it going?
Episode 4, going good, I guess. We're de-stressing after picking up my daughter from school, so it was a heck of a drive.
How far is the drive?
It's only like 5 miles, but I ended up having to go the long way because the we have to cross under the freeway to get to the other side of the from Mission Viejo over to Lisa Viejo side, and all those roads that go across the freeway are old and outdated and 1-2 lanes. So anytime they do any work on it at all, it just slows us down.
Oh, that's there's something on the top of your video is kind of like hanging down over your camera or something, I think.
Oh, you're right. I
Yeah,
have it right under the monitor. There we
there
go.
you go. That's perfect. So which that's the 5, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it's a 5. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's La Paz. You're familiar with the neighborhood. La Paz, right there. So
Yeah, I remember. Oh, La Paz and the 5. Yes, right there. Yeah, that's where my chiropractor was. So um well, there's a
I
lot.
no, I
Yeah.
was gonna say today when you were giving comments in our Toastmasters meeting, when you were giving the evaluation and you're talking about gestures and lighting and in the background and all those things, I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Since we talked about that, and was it last week we talked a lot about that, so that was
Yeah, I
cool.
thought she was doing it. I thought she did a good job, but she just a little more, because on video you just typically lose. I mean, I'm not really making it up, but we found like seems like you lose like about 20 or 30% of energy just gets sucked up by the video somehow. So you have to tend to like
Maybe it's the worse eye contact.
I don't know. I don't know. We just found that
But
was
you were
all.
talking about gestures, and I had just watched this week a Harvard a YouTube recording of a Harvard class that was talking about public speaking, and they were talking about gestures, and they said there's three kinds of gestures,
Oh,
and I'm like, oh, okay, there's three kinds of gestures. There's the gift.
yeah.
Oh gosh, what was it the gift, the chop? I wrote them down and I put them somewhere. Where did I put them? Right here on my random note. The gift, the show, and the chop. So the
Oh,
gift is hands up,
yeah.
right? This kind of gesture.
Yeah.
The show is almost anything where you're accenting something. You show something off. You talk about this. You're counting numbers, whatever, anything else. And
Yeah.
then there's the chop where you're emphasizing something.
Ah.
Or the politicians with a finger. So it's like it says everything falls into those three categories. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting
Yeah, that's
idea.
interesting because I remember I watching a video on Bill Clinton, and he would always
Mhm.
do this sort of thing because he didn't want to
Mhm.
point at you, so he'd do some other.
But the example they showed of "Don't Point" was when he said, "I did not have relations with that woman," and he's pointing the entire time in that
Well, that's
part.
because he was nervous.
He was lying because he was lying, right? So
It's it's like, speaking of politicians, there's some exciting stuff going on right now. I think we're just a few hours away from potentially having the government shut down, and there are
yeah,
negotiations, which I think is just absolutely amazing what's happening. The whole Trump thing, and it's like, ay, ay, ay. So I was in another group today, and we were sort of talking about with all this drama going on, and all the drama that's going to be going on in the next 4 years. I think things are going to probably change. And we were just talking about, and then we were talking about AI. We're talking about what were they talking about? The tipping point or no, the singularity? And then they define that as being when AI is smarter than everybody else on the planet. And they were
yeah.
estimating that to be coming up in just a handful of years. And so we're talking about, and this will probably be our, maybe we can do one before the end of the year, but this will probably be our last podcast potentially before the end of the year. And so we were talking about goals and where we should be in 2025. And so I just wrote down a couple little notes of things that I think something that would be worthwhile skills to develop in 2025.
Hmm.
And it always comes back to critical thinking and AI. That's what kind of our little group of 3 kind of went through and discussed. Those would probably be very good things, along with presentation and selling and talking and listening. And so really not a whole lot changing other than AI, I think is going to be a tool that's just going to change everything.
Yeah, I think it does, and yet, what is it changing? And I think what happened earlier this year when I was thinking about it and I was using it, AI for writing stuff and generating stuff is
Yeah.
it's not any. On one hand, I'm trying to downplay it here. It's no different than Google, right? I go out, I Google resources, I find 5 or 6 references, I read up on them, and I extrapolate and put them together, and I write a paper on it. The difference here is I can have it do a first cut.
Yeah, well, Google's a search engine, right? It takes pre-existing content and it doesn't make anything up. It just presents these are all your options, right? Click, 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 read. But AI does that and then summarizes for you, right? Which is
Yeah, but how is it summarizing? How is it knowing what's valuable and what's not, right? I mean, it looks at a piece of information, it looks like the information before and after, and then it compares that with other cross-referencing where that information exists and is able to find connections between those things. But I think that has changed. Its ability to do that has changed and will continue to change. But I'm really wondering if the ability to make those connections, particularly the ones that are off the wall and out there, is something that can be replicated in that level. It may be I read a book earlier this year that talked about the AI intelligence and how it would show like a chart, right? And across the bottom are the different areas of intelligence that you would have:
yeah.
mathematics, analytical thinking, whatever the different thing, language, and it would show, okay, this is the human, this is AI. But then on other areas, it was the exact opposite. And you would see there was these valleys of information, if you were to graph it, where AI was below the human average.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? And this is the mistake that we can't make because everybody thinks all they can think in terms of linear. Humans think in terms of linear. So there's this, I'm sure you're familiar with it. There's this concept called Moore's Law, and it's been around for a long
Mhm.
time. And
Yep.
basically, the general rule is that, every 18 months or so, the processing power doubles. And so what happens is it's not a lot at the beginning, but man, you get this sort of hockey curve stick coming up. And I think that with AI, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people, actually. I think it's going to happen way quicker than we think it's going to happen.
I'm not talking about that at all because I do think the impact and what it's going to be able to do is immediate. All right, I see that. I think what I'm getting at is we're going to use it to fill a lot of grunt work
Oh, yeah, already. Yeah.
until it gets to a point where it gets we start valuing the output at a higher performance level, like some like a a master's version of whatever that comes out, right? A masterpiece or whatever. And then when that happens, the worry I have is that people will stop being able to create the masterwork as a human, and they'll all start using the AI tool to be able to develop it. And soon we're going to lose something in that connection. So we'll make something new. There will be some other new creation that comes out of the AI human interface or whatever, but the ability to make what we could before will be gone.
Yeah, I think that's what we were talking about. That's so interesting. That's why skills in 2025
Mhm.
are really critical thinking skills. I don't know that we'll ever go out of style, right?
I was just thinking like Mozart and all these people who in the past that we consider their work masterpieces and have survived till today.
Yeah.
Could someone today really write like Mozart?
Oh, sure.
Are you sure?
Positive.
I'm wondering if the the changes that have occurred to our ability to think, our ability to hear and see, and then of course all the technology we have inherently changed our ability so that we could no longer create the same type of thing he could. It would be a modern interpretation of that. And if that's true, then it's much easier to accept the fact that AI is going to make the same thing happen in the future. That we have to give up on the masterpieces of today, and they've had their due, they've had their time, and once AI gets into the works, they'll be the masterpieces of tomorrow.
No, I just, I think inherently, and I could be totally wrong, but I'm going to go down this road anyways. I just think inherently that we just think we're the apex predator and that we're so smart. And in the grand scheme of things, we're not very smart, actually. And I think Moore's law is going to get us, right? Moore's law is going to give us, and it's too
I
late.
wonder how all this fits in with your journey through religion, though. Where does AI fit into religious teachings and the like,
I've been
right?
thinking about that. I do not know. That is an excellent question.
Man is created in the image of God, right? What's AI created in?
The image of
That
man.
also is that also the image of God? Who knows?
Well, indirectly, yeah, I
Why
think.
not directly? I mean,
Well, I don't know these. Hang on. Let me think for a second about that. So AI is created with all of our flaws and all of our imperfections. If AIs learn from humans, we shouldn't be surprised when they start doing human-like stuff, right?
mhm.
Which already I was watching a show, I don't know, like a month ago or something, that this one lady was just off her rocker, so angry because they're saying that AI had racism and all these different things. And I'm like, well, duh. I mean, it learned from us, so of
Mhm.
course, right? I
Yep.
wouldn't expect anything other than that. But there's going to come a time, there's going to become a tipping point when it's going to be smarter than we are. It's going to be thinking very differently about things than we think. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Well, I guess the idea is if you believe that man is a creation of God,
Yeah,
and then AI is a creation of man,
yeah,
does that make it against God, or does that make it an extension of man? Because I think you can go in circles on this, and we're not going to come up with an answer on this, obviously, but
yeah,
I could see arguments either way. One of the things that always I never liked about the idea of man is made in the image of God is the idea that two arms, two legs, a head, and a hair, all that stuff. To me, it was like that's what people heard when they heard image. But to me, image was about the brain, the mind, the personality. It was about not about the physical characteristics, but about everything else. And
yeah,
if you take it from
yeah.
that viewpoint, then AI can just be an extension of another creation of another creation.
Think so. I mean, I guess just generally, let's say God created man. And when I say man, I don't remember the word for it, but it means human. It doesn't mean like men.
Mankind.
It means humans, is what it means more precisely, actually. So a lot of women get all riled up about that sort of stuff, or whatever. So anyways, I just want to correct that. It means human beings. Yeah, I don't know, Chris. I don't know. It's really interesting. All I know is I was taking a yoga class one time. I took a lot of yoga classes, and this yoga teacher said one thing that just stuck with me. She said, keep up and you'll be kept up, which means that, you can't slack off. And I don't think now is the time to slack off. If anything, you got to put, especially on our show, which is really designed to go in circles and to think about things. But, hopefully the circles are fun if we walk in. This is a
Yep.
big one. And so I know I'm just really decided this whole New Year's resolution thing that'll probably last 2 weeks, like it does for most people. I just want to start focusing more on AI, learning about AI, understanding it, understanding the tools that are out there. Think that's valuable. And so maybe down the road we can have more conversations about AI and tools and things. But for instance, I mean, you showed me very cool thing, this Notebook LM. I
Hmm.
took, so there's 3 videos up there right now. We have one posted, and then I think I kind of just sort of decided that just since I posted the first one on Sunday, we'll just keep Sundays as days, I guess, or whatever.
Okay.
Or, um, and with our like 2 viewers that we currently like have, which is probably you and me, probably. So,
Yep.
um, but it's awesome. So I basically uploaded that, uploaded the audio, and it basically gave me the title and a little nice little couple paragraph description that if you're watching this video or any other video, it'll probably all be the same way. That little description in there was generated by Notebook LM actually, and it's pretty darn good.
Mhm.
But then,
I've been
oh my
really
God,
impressed with that. What I'm finding is the generic AI is so-so, and it has all the flaws that the internet has because that's where it's getting its information from. But for these closed systems that have data that you know the bounds of, it's a much more impressive thing.
Yeah.
So I think I told you I was talking to Andrew in our group, and he was talking about this 500-page book that they use as a reference manual for figuring out mental disorders that people suffer from.
Oh, that's the DSM code or whatever.
DSM, yeah. Yeah. So I put that in, in and said, okay, ask me a question, and I was asking questions of it. And it doesn't give you the specific answer you're going to want. If you know what's in there, and you're an expert, it isn't going to give you the 100% answer.
Right,
But
right.
if you're someone who doesn't know and you need guidance on how to start, it's probably an 80 or 90% answer,
Yeah.
which is a huge jump
Yeah.
considering how little effort's involved to get to that.
Yeah. It's like a powerful tool. It's like it's really cool. So anyways, that's my thought for the new year. I'm going to be thinking critically, logic. I'm still I'm still hung up on the fact that I believe that logic really could be the foundation that truth is built upon, actually. Um, I'm not sure if it's 100% true, but I think it's mostly true. Certainly enough to like really think in terms of logic. So I watch way too much TV, right? And I watch MSNBC and I watch Fox News, and they're pretty much diametrically opposed. But if you
Yep.
look at their arguments and if you can not get sucked into the emotion, they all use the exact same tactics. They are the same dog, just one's on the left, one's on the right, you know?
No one's having a real logical debate anymore. No one does any of that,
No,
right?
no.
I got really angry, not angry, but I got frustrated with the news the other day. What were they? Just last night. So we've got this strike by Amazon workers here
Yeah, right.
going on, and what Amazon's saying they're not our workers, right? They're contractors through another company,
Yeah.
and the company that actually hired them. I haven't heard anything from them, but I heard from the union who is representing them that well, they wear Amazon outfits and they present themselves as Amazon employees, and I'm like, and then the reporter says, yeah, we're getting conflicting stories here. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're getting the same story. You're getting conflicting viewpoints of
Yeah.
what's the appropriate action allowed here.
What's important? Yeah.
And the fact that the reporter could not, in my mind, distinguish between conflicting opinions and conflicting facts. They
Yeah.
weren't conflicting facts. They were actually the same facts on both sides.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Almost nobody thinks of those terms, though. Almost nobody thinks. And, sorry to do this to you, but I'm going to bring jujitsu back. And one of the things that's so important if you don't want to get murdered in jujitsu is you must not get emotional. And that's what happens. And that's the whole thing. Man, they're just trying to poke and everything. And it's amazing because you look on MSNBC on the left, and I swear somebody's got some talking point thing that's basically like, oh, Trump's a pushover and Musk is taken over and we call him President Musk and everything.
Yeah, I heard shadow president used this week.
And I
Yeah.
started laughing at that because I'm like, oh my God, it's such a feeble attempt, right? But it's going to work probably most of the time, actually. And it's like such a horrible argument. But
So I get upset when people misuse words.
yeah,
Sometimes it's because they're lazy, because it's an easier way to get someone to a point faster, to get to
yeah,
it through an emotion or through an idea faster. Oftentimes, though, in my mind, it seems to be purposely done, right? When you use negative loaded word.
of course, it's
So,
positive.
so when you call someone a Nazi,
Yeah,
right? In all likelihood, you're not thinking that they're gassing people and killing off a group or anything like that,
yeah,
but you're saying, hey, they're as bad as, right? And you're jumping over a bunch of space to get to this conclusion.
yeah,
You know, both sides heavily misuse the word fascist, communist, socialist, all these aspects,
yeah,
partially because the definitions have changed over time, or they're not well known, right? And but it's not just that. Even other words that always offend me and get me upset, because to me, I don't like the fact that you're redefining the word, which means I can no longer have a conversation with you the way it was, right? I don't mind arguing any point, but if we're going to have an argument, let's make sure we're using the same language in what we're arguing.
yeah. I've studied marketing for many, many years, actually. And that is the game, Chris.
I
It's
get
like,
it.
just like jujitsu is, look, you got to get position before submission. It's the same thing. You got to redefine language, right? And weaponize it. And that's how you win.
But see, that's and the problem, or the situation, I don't know if it's a problem, is that it's about winning.
Yes.
It's about winning at the cost of others.
Well,
It's
yeah,
about a zero-sum game where if for me to win, you have to lose.
yeah, yeah,
And that's the basis for a lot of these aspects, which makes it very difficult then for someone to lead a good life. Because in essence, what you're doing is my good life is dependent on taking advantage of you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. To a large extent, yes.
Right? And so this is inherently a problem that I foresee. If you're trying to build a society that is more aware of and caring of others,
Yeah.
that's the exact opposite of what we're doing.
Well, look at our society, right? There's more hate and frustration now than probably ever, maybe, you know?
I watch this show sometimes on YouTube, but it's a British game show called Countdown.
Yeah.
But they have some comedians who do it called 8 out of 10 Cats. But anyway, on the show they've got this woman who, because since there's a vocabulary element, she's like the dictionary corner. She runs the dictionary corner, and so they mentioned a book called Classical Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue, written in 1795.
Interesting, yeah.
And it's a bunch of English words that mean something else. Not all of them are vulgar in by our current definition, but there are things in here like a fart catcher. A fart catcher is a servant who follows behind the master because just but I love the term because it's so visual as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's like awesome.
I want to bring some of these words back into use, and we'll see what happens.
That would be pretty cool. Well, here you go. Okay, so this is why we've got to get better, and hopefully our people that like us want to get better too. So the beautiful thing about jujitsu, right, which is really it's just a language, is that you have to study and you have to get so good at this that you no longer are afraid of an attack because you've got so many techniques. So typically what I found is people only get mad or upset when they're out of techniques, when they're out of things. They don't know what to do, so they get mad. They want to fight, actually. And so if you have enough skill, enough logic, enough self-control, you can take that and you can redirect that energy to some other place. So I learned this from Jocko. He had a podcast on the other day. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So he was talking about, let's say you have one of your people that you're working with, and they've got some example. It might be like they're running 2 weeks late to deliver something, and your dude comes in and he's all upset. He's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this shipping company is going to be 2 days or 2 weeks late. And what are we going to do? And how are we going to do it?" And so the first initial response would be, "Hey, dude, just calm down, right?" But that only is going to make you more upset. It's what you want to do is you want to come. It's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that." It's like, so what are we going to do then? I mean, yeah, 2 weeks is going to be, well, what are we going to do right now? And all of a sudden, now you're with him and you're redirected in such a subtle way. They go, "Look, we got to fix and we got to solve this problem." Actually, that's jujitsu, you know?
Chris Voss had talked about that too, though. He basically said, let them feel heard
Yes.
before you contradict or get them to think differently.
Yes.
You got to get it out of your system, right? So you got to complain. You got to be heard. Everyone has to acknowledge all the pain that you're feeling, whatever it is, needs to be heard and understood. At that point, then
Yeah.
you can start to say, okay, now what do we do about it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like one of my old mentors told me it's kind of like they're spewing venom and they have poison. You just got to get the poison out because they're out of there. Literally at that point, they're like, have you heard the expression, "You're out of your mind"? I mean,
Hmm.
they're out of their mind. They lose all ability to think rationally at that point. And so you got to drain the emotion and then you can start working on solutions. You know, who was the one, Seven Habits of Highly Effective, whatever that book was, is so good.
Yep.
I try to use that as much as I can.
Is that Covey?
Yeah, Stephen Covey, I believe. And he's basically saying, first, what is it? I can't remember the quote, but it's something, first you want to seek to understand and then be understood. Because if you do the other way, you're just talking to a wall, you know. In
But
fact,
that,
it's gonna get
oh,
worse.
I just said but that's the whole idea of instead of saying but, you say and.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So
That's an
you
idea.
say
Yeah.
and this and that, and you can get to a point where the buts come out, but
Yeah.
but we need to default to and.
Default to end. Yeah. And you do that just through jujitsu. You just it's just training. It's just time on the mat, and somebody smacks you in the head if you say but until finally after a while you just say and you just and
But
it just
this I see, and the this applies to critical thinking as well, though.
yes,
And
yes.
the reason why I was thinking that was I remember when I was an IT manager years ago, and a woman who worked for me had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend's his ex-girlfriend was still part of that group
Oh boy, okay, yeah.
and
Yeah.
would always pick on her.
Okay.
Insults, all kinds of things. And she would always get frustrated. And I told her, next time you get insulted, just say thanks.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
And when that happened, the woman who was doing the insulting got frustrated because she had no way to
Of
get the
course.
reaction she wanted anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was out of tools to get the reaction she was going for.
Yeah. 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 Out of tools. You don't have any more tools. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, what was somebody telling me? I can't remember. Another coach or somebody was telling me that, if I get upset by somebody else's actions, like, really? You're going to give that person that much power to control your emotional state because they say some words at you? I mean, they're like, come on. Come on.
Anytime someone says, I feel this,
Yeah.
I need them they need to take a step back and make sure that they understand how to separate the feeling from the thinking.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay to feel things,
Yeah.
but when that is your primary argument for something,
Yeah.
there is a problem there that your judgment will be negatively impacted by those feelings.
Oh my gosh, of course, because you're literally out of your mind at that point. You literally cannot think rationally. So if you're on the other side of that, your first job is to contain that and to let the poison drain out because you're going to go, well, that doesn't make sense. And, you shouldn't feel that way. And logically, that's not the right thing. It's like, oh man, it's just, you're going down the wrong road at that point.
I had that problem just last week, and I probably could have handled that one better.
Yeah.
My daughter had left her PE clothes at school over the weekend, which you're not
Oh,
supposed to do.
okay. Yeah.
And she was worried that she wasn't going to have PE clothes on Monday and all that. And so we had to go online and order them right now. And she was stressing out. And I'm like,
Gotcha.
well, she was stressing out. And I was trying to calm her down by saying, calm down, which of course is not what we're supposed to be doing.
Gotcha. You're going the wrong way.
I was eventually able to get through that and we were able to logically talk it through. But I'm really thinking, how could I have how could I have more easily gotten her to a state where she was thinking that way? Because eventually we said, they have loaners that you can use and you can explain it to the teacher and they'll understand. And not only that, you probably left it somewhere and it got turned into lost and found or it's in one of your classrooms. I mean, at the end of the day, it's who's going to steal some dirty old gym clothes, right?
Yeah.
So she was able to calm down after that, but getting her to that calm state, I'm wondering how I could have done it faster. How
Well,
I
you
got
mentioned
her.
Chris Voss. He's got tools to do that, man. He's like,
Yeah.
you label it, right? Like everything. Hey, it seems like you're really upset about this. Right? In the late night DJ voice. Oh, it seems like
Well, my favorite thing is when he says, "Yeah, you go in there and you say, I'm gonna sound like a jerk, or I'm gonna be a jerk," right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
He starts off at the end where the person's gonna think in their minds this guy's a jerk, and he diffuses the entire buildup in that person's mind.
It's like in sales, man, you're setting an anchor. Hey, would you like to donate $1,000 to, Girl Scouts? They're like, dude, you're out of your mind. Okay, okay. That's probably totally unreasonable. How about $50? Okay, here's $50. Where you would have started
Yep.
with 50, they said you're out of your mind at 50.
Yep.
So it's just these techniques are so common, and I really wanted to say but, and they're just so hard to implement because you're not in control of your emotions. So the last thing we need is two out of control people. That just leads to all sorts of bad stuff happening.
As you were talking, you said you want to work on critical thinking in AI.
Yeah.
I think I really want to work on being comfortable being louder in public.
Hang on, describe. It sounds like we're going to do a little therapy right now, actually.
So last night we went to my daughter's drama performance, and my wife and I were doing the concession stand at the back,
Mhm.
selling off the whatever. And I kept trying, and I said a few times, get your water here, well, kind of what you would expect in a football game or a baseball game, water, snacks, cookies, and
Yeah,
and I forced myself to do that. I was uncomfortable. I didn't get any negative aspect from it. There
yeah,
was nothing wrong with it, but I wanted to be able to take on that kind of attitude, that kind of open, not aggressive, but very vocal public viewpoint. I want to be able to feel comfortable doing that
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
I don't. It is definitely outside my comfort zone. So I think I need to take the time or take the effort to do that in those situations, to be the boisterous one, to be the one to, you know, I don't want to be like not a snake oil salesman or anything like that, but I want to be the one who's out there, talking and getting attention. I want to be comfortable doing that.
yeah, yeah. So here's an idea for you.
Okay.
So you go into a different character, and I see that you
Mhm.
like hats. And so you might just designate, like, for example, that brown hat over to your right. You might say, that is my outgoing personality. And you create this character. And man, when that hat goes on, boom, you're like in state, you know?
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of using the hats. No, the character idea I thought of. I've come up with a character, an alter ego, basically,
Hmm,
right?
hmm, hmm, hmm.
I remember someone in Toastmasters had mentioned you build your own alter ego, make it who you want it to be, and then just
Yeah,
put it on whenever you need it.
yeah.
And apparently that's what even Beyonce did with her Sasha Fierce character, that was
Hmm.
her alter ego. So I like the idea. It's because then you're acting. Then it's not you. And then you're a step away from it.
It's
But
a
then
little safer.
when you're comfortable with it, you can adopt it as part of you.
Yeah, yeah. When it becomes part of you, actually.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're disingenuous. You're just like, you just train for a set of skills that are needed in this particular instance, you know?
Mhm.
I mean, if you're visiting somebody that's dying of cancer in a hospital, please leave your brown hat off, right? That's that's not the right time to put that hat on. Maybe but you put another hat on. Yeah,
Mhm.
these are awesome techniques. This is all freaking jujitsu, man. This is all because everything in jujitsu is all based on you do this, I do this, and you do that, and then here's the counter to this thing.
So
And
explain how your alter ego works in jujitsu.
well, I'm not saying you have an alter ego in jujitsu. It's like you just train with a set of techniques that you practice over and over and over that are pre-thought, just like writing, clarified thought. So you don't have to think
Yes.
like what you're going to do. That it's pre-programmed. And even at that point, we talked about it previously. You don't even have it's not even a free will thing anymore, right? I mean, it's like the free will has come months and years ahead of that.
Well, if you think about all the things that you do on a daily basis, right? I mean, driving to work, you take the same route.
Yeah.
However you do things, make coffee throughout the day, you probably have a routine that you follow that doesn't require anywhere near the mental effort it did the first few times you did
Oh,
it.
right, of course,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's the idea of a routine, and if you build a good routine, then that happens. So when you properly learn a martial art, you're learning thousands of years of knowledge and how best to move in a situation, and then it becomes part of you, right?
That's
It's
been
it's
tested,
it's not
yes.
even a thought. It's a pre-programmed pattern. It makes me think of the principles guy, Ray Dalio, that you mentioned last week,
Yeah, yeah.
and he and his team figured out economic scenarios to where they would start to recognize patterns and say, this is the same thing that happened then. This is the same thing that happened then. And then they were able to figure out what the next step is based upon that. So if someone comes up and swings a punch at you, your body's going to say, "Oh, this is that situation," and it's going to respond in the way that you were taught to respond.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's exactly right. And just there's just it's just you're just building habits, the same atomic habit thing. You're just building habits, but you're thinking about it ahead of time instead of just being reactive.
But sitting down and planning your habit, sitting down and putting the thought into making a good habit, or even the vocabulary you use. And this is the other thing we talked about was
Yeah,
how you can have branded vocabulary, words that you use on a regular basis that are specific to you and the way you think and they resonate.
yeah,
But you need to think through. what does this word mean? How will I use it? It actually is a conscious thought. It's not just like you're randomly going to pick up the words that make up your
Oh,
character.
oh, no, you
You've
think
got to build the words that make your vocabulary.
yeah, like a great technique in sales. Like if you get confused in sales, if you don't know what to say, just say these words, just tell me more. Tell me more about that. And it freaking works like magic, you know? And you
Yeah.
can use that for almost any problem that you have. And then it gives you time to like slow down and think through things, you know? So yeah, these are just whatever. What do you call this? Like way back when there was a, I don't know if you may be familiar with it, but there was this book called Design Patterns. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Way back when. And what it was in software development, this was like 30 years ago, is you kind of kept doing the same things and they modeled after a house. They're like, when they go build a house, everything's not from scratch. They know that doors are certain widths, heights, if their toilets are certain sizes. They're just this stuff is known. And so they start designing around those like pre-done units that we know are going to work for the average human. We don't have to think through it. You don't have to think through, well, how tall should I make the sink, right? I mean, these are just pre-done numbers.
When you've got a project, and it's particularly when you've got a bunch of different skill sets coming together to put something, a bunch of different knowledge, you need to have your principles, your constraints, your assumptions. All those need to be talked through and figured out. They need to be documented or whatever it is, so that some guy who is not the key person in the project, it doesn't make a decision that screws up the project, because is they understand the thinking principles. We're building this to do this,
Yeah.
or our goal is to achieve whatever. Yeah, I think those constraints to me are what give us success. People look at constraints as something that limits your ability to do something. It's a limitation, but it also helps you make decisions to actually get something done.
Yes, 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 exactly. And I know, like, I don't know when it was, a week or two ago, we were like looking at your lighting and you had all these other lights on and all this other stuff. And so I started putting constraints on you. I said, one light, dude, that's all you get, right? Because you don't have the skill to be able to mix multiple lights together. It's like, if you don't even know how to use one light, what makes you think you're going to be able to learn how to use three lights? Too much, actually.
That is a fundamental of critical thinking that we need to figure out, is how to define constraints. And the reason I'm thinking that is when you and I talk, when I talk with anyone, you'll say something, and my mind will come up with boom, 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 because of things I'm thinking about based upon what you just said. And then you'll go on to the next thing, and now I've got the next three things in my head. And now I've got six things I want to talk about because you mentioned two things. And by the end of your talking, I've got a dozen things that in my mind.
Okay.
I need a way to filter out, to constrain where my thoughts are going, to stay focused on the topic at hand, or the like. I think maybe that's one of the critical elements to make critical thinking effective and in the moment, would
Yeah.
be to put how to define the constraints.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll tell you how to do that. I mean, I have a tool for that. Just a piece of paper and a pencil, and say, "Hey, that's really a great thought. Let me write that down, and let's get back to it later because I want to give you all my attention because what you're saying is important right now." I mean, these.
I've got that. I've got that
Oh, you do
right.
that? Oh, do you do that? Well, there you go.
Even then, I'm losing a third of what's going through my head, even with the notes.
Oh, well, that's okay. Then you got to slow me down. Then you got to say, "Hang on, give me a second. That's really important. Give me a second. I just want to jot this down." And I'm like, "Oh, you just like just stroke my ego. What I said was really important." It's like, "Oh, dude, take all the time you want."
No, it's true though. We were talking as soon as you mentioned jujitsu. A lot of it is just a trigger for something that happened to me, right? You mentioned jujitsu. I was talking to one of the fathers of one of the people in my daughter's drama play this week, and he just started doing jujitsu locally, yeah, locally here, because his daughter's been doing it for 4 years. So he's like, oh, he's getting old. He figured he better do something. So he started. He says it's hard. He's having a hard time because it just started.
It's hard, and because your body's not and your mind's not there, and you're just, we're just not used to like as men like laying on top of each other, trying to choke each other unconscious, sweating on each other. That's just not like normal behavior for human beings, especially in our society. But after a while, you get used to it. It's just totally normal after a while. It's just kind of crazy. Yeah, I think these are I don't know that these are critical thinking tools per
Well,
se, but they're
there,
techniques that slow things down.
but why do you need to slow things down?
Oh, because you could be getting overwhelmed, actually. Let's say some guy's just beating you up, or just you need to slow the pace down because you need to slow it down because you're going to lose because it's too fast, right?
So, and that makes the learned patterns, the learned habits. That's another tool, right? Because then that slows things down because I then don't have to think about that. I've got a program that will handle that aspect. I've
Yes.
got an action. I've got a predefined set of actions that for this situation. So
Yeah.
while my body or my brain is doing that, I can take some effort to figure out the next step.
Yes, yes, you slow it down. And there's a bunch of techniques you can use to slow it down. Bunch, and you start training these and training these. But even if you're having an argument with your wife or something like that, if you want to slow things down, because the
Hmm.
problem is, right, especially in critical relationships, if you start getting emotional, now words start getting said that sometimes can't be undone. And you don't want to say, I don't want to say something stupid. I mean, although that is probably smarter than saying something stupid. You're like, listen, let me just give me just a couple minutes. Give me a break. I just need to carefully think through what you're saying. Or even if you don't want to do that, just say, hey, can you repeat? I just want to make sure I really understand can you just repeat that again? And those are techniques you can slow things down.
Hmm.
And so,
I'm thinking. So when the critical thinking, the purpose that we're talking about, right? You need a goal to
yeah,
think
to get to
toward,
the truth.
right? So to get to the truth, to get to the best car you want to buy, to get whatever it is that you're doing, you've got a goal. So I think you need to remember that there is a goal, and that's where the constraints, the time saving, and all that comes into play because you can overthink everything.
Oh my gosh, of course.
And when you start to get really into critical thinking and you build that skill, you really build the ability to just start branching out.
Yeah,
And so being able to cut off branches that are going somewhere else,
yeah,
and either by taking notes or whatever it is you're doing. But that's what I mean by constraints. And I think so. I would say critical thinking towards a goal
yeah.
needs constraints to reach the goal.
Yeah, I would say though, at that point, you need to build habits because when you're in the middle of a fight, critical thinking is really a bad idea at that point, right?
Yeah.
That's not the time to critical think because
No.
otherwise you'd be dead. And I think it's really important to dictate how much danger there is and how much time do I have right now. And most of the time, you got way more time than you think you have. Very seldom do you only have a few seconds left to live, right? Like, how important is this decision? How much time do I have? Because you want to run the clock out, if possible. Time is your friend, man. Ooh, time is your friend. Yeah. Yeah. Jiu-jitsu teaches you all that stuff, actually. And it teaches you not mentally, but it's like you learn that in your body at the same time. And then you have this union between your mind and your body. It's so cool. And there's no way around it, dude. You got to roll around on the mat and just get your ass kicked over and over and over and over and over again. There's no way around that. Pain is part of the process. Sorry. It's just,
I
you
think
want to get in shape and work out, you're gonna have to sweat and burn, and it's just gonna be hard.
I think life, the idea that life is pain is something that people need to accept to a great extent,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it's a difficult thing because the world itself is trying to make money by taking away our pain.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's causing a
And
whole different set of pain.
yeah, we're just punting the pain down the road.
Yeah,
I,
right.
I had this. I remember in physics we learned that if you lift a weight straight up
Yeah.
or you roll it up a slope,
Hmm.
it's the same amount of work that gets done,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
right?
Because you got to
The,
come up this certain
one
distance.
is a hard path, the other one's a little easier, an
Yeah.
easier path. So it got me to start thinking, I wonder if everything in life is that way. So, and the example I came up with is if you lead a really healthy life and you eat food and you work out and you don't get sick and you get old, you're going to spend a lot of money on exercise, on trainers, on good food, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
But you're going to save all the money later in life that was your medical costs.
yeah, right, right.
Versus if you eat unhealthy, you eat off the dollar menu, you get fat, you get all the medical conditions,
Yeah,
then you're going to have to spend all the money you would have spent on a healthy life, but you would be spending it in medical costs. So at the end of the day, there's no difference between how much you spend on your life. It's how you lived it and where you spent it.
yeah, yeah. And probably the first way the quality of life will be better. You're going to develop better habits. You're going to be more resilient to stuff, right?
I don't know. I mean, if living 30 years of life doing whatever the hell you want to, does that have a higher value than having 60 years of relative health?
I don't know. That's up to every individual.
I think we all think it's better for us, especially when later in life and when you're at towards the end of your life, you don't want to have to deal with all the difficulties. But
Yeah,
so I think we generally think there's higher value in it.
yeah.
But if you're going to allow people to make decisions on whether or not to wear seatbelts and other kinds of things in their life and whether or not they're going to eat whatever, I think then you can let them decide whether or not they want to suffer later in life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as long as you just think through what the consequences
Well,
are.
that's the toughest thing, right? People don't take the time to think.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Take the time. I mean, man, there's no better tool, at least for me, than just like a notebook and a pencil or a pen, and just kind of think through this. And a lot of times, I'll be frustrated. I'll be feeling a certain way, and then I'll incorrectly judge what's actually happening until I start writing it down, and I'm like, wait, like what is actually true here? Or maybe it's not totally true, but it's like, can I get a little more truer? Think in terms of a spectrum, not just is it true or not true, but let's just
Well,
push towards the true side.
I mean, it's like why we value debate
Yeah,
or even an essay. The ability to self-analyze or to analyze something objectively and be able to call out the good and the bad points of it.
yeah,
I mean, I think that's really one of the things that's impressive. The being able to argue the other side
yeah.
to me shows that you understand things well, and I think
Oh, that's a
essays,
great thing to do. Yeah, yeah,
that's really where critical thinking comes in. When you watch the news and you hear someone say something, when you watch one of the biased news channels, which that they are biased left or right, and you watch
everything.
and you listen specifically for things that you hear that say, no, that sounds left or that sounds right. I think it's a really good way to figure things out.
Yeah,
Yeah, and not only that, it helps you kind of judge the person. Okay, when I'm hearing stuff from this person is can't control their emotions and they're going all one way or the other. And the other person, this one's a little bit more balanced. So even though they're working for a station that's left or right, they come across a little more even.
yeah,
I think I told you a few months ago, Jordan Peterson came out with I think it's like a 25-page book on our instruction pamphlet on how to write an essay.
yeah. I think I saw
And I
that.
think I think that's a really good
Yeah,
thing because it teaches you how to reason through not only why you believe something,
yeah,
but arguments against how to contradict arguments against what you believe, which means
yeah,
first you need to go and figure out what are the arguments against your idea,
yeah,
and then how do you argue against those arguments against your
yeah,
idea.
yeah.
If everyone could do that, I think the world would be a much saner place.
A much saner place, actually. Yeah. Yeah, but you can just start giving people tools though, just slowly, and they don't have to necessarily like something I learned my master taught me in jujitsu is like right now at your low level, you just copy. You don't need to understand why it works, how it works, all the dynamics, all the hundreds of years of fighting to figure out why this technique is the best thing. You don't need to know any of that. All you need to know is left foot here, right hand here. Make sure you go to the left, right? And then eventually you'll start to learn it in your body. But those are the first steps. It's like, so, if I was teaching somebody how to argue with their wife or not argue with their wife, I'm like, dude, listen, shut up. Just say this. You don't need to think. In fact, you'll screw it up. Just say this, right? And your outcome will be better. Now, we can get more nuance down the road, but at least if you're saying that, at least he's not going to think you're an idiot, right? Or it may prevent you saying something that's incredibly harmful, that. Like you get so frustrated. I've heard stories of people that are so frustrated with their wife, they'll mention something like, "Well, maybe we should just get a divorce then," or something like that. And I was like, "Oh my God, you should not have said that." Because now all of a sudden she's like, maybe it's right. Because if you can't even listen to it, maybe that's not a bad idea. All of a sudden, in a matter of seconds, things went from bad to horribly bad.
Yeah, I I've never been one to get overly emotional, so I
Yeah.
have a hard time when I hear people who everything comes from emotion for
Yeah,
them.
yeah. And that's cool for some cases. So they need a little more logic. But yeah. Yeah, you got to balance. You got to balance the passion, the emotion with, logic. It's just like we always talk about the head and the heart. We got to somehow integrate those together in some way.
I'm trying to find something after we last talked. Um, I looked up. Oh, it was a summary of one of the books that I had for on Notebook LM, and the summary it gave me was like five things to do,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna figure out which one it was, but it was like basically telling you how to sell or how to no
Yeah.
it was no it was Schopenhauer's How to Win Every Argument,
Yeah. There you go. Okay.
and basically everything in there was the kind of marketing stuff you talk about and how to get the reaction,
Yeah.
and it's like because a lot of the stuff in there is pretty devious, right? I mean, it's
Okay.
it's how to
Sure.
win an argument. You attack the character of the person. You do all these types of things, and I'm looking at this going, "Oh, this is horrible," and yet it's like,
Very
if
effective.
you can embrace it and accept it,
Yeah.
you can win.
You can win. Right. You can
That is
win.
really the only thing that matters, and really, you should only ever have one priority first. That's the first thing you concentrate on. If you only have one priority and it's to win, you can do it.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
any
Yes.
other
But there's a
principles
cost to that, though.
any other principles have to come secondary to that somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, though, yes,
It's
you can
like
win once, but you're not going to win multiple times because nobody wants to play with you anymore, right? Because they don't trust you. So you've got to somehow, above all else, love this person, and you realize that right now they're out of their mind. So you're going to do the absolute minimum necessary physical work to maintain them and control them so you don't get hurt and so they don't get hurt. That's the essence of jujitsu. The essence of jujitsu is you want to use the absolute minimum force necessary to like just make this thing go away. I mean when I don't mean that by hurting the other person, but just bring down the energy level.
I get that. What I'm getting at is, we've talked about you've talked about what's his name, the ex-CIA guy.
Yeah, yeah, with Bustamante, the hair guy,
Yeah,
whatever.
and
Hey,
the
can I
like.
make, sorry to interrupt you. Like that dude probably is making so much money. Why can't he fix his teeth?
Some people that becomes a point of pride.
Well, apparently. Okay. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you actually, but
Yeah, I saw a billboard with a woman with a huge gap in her teeth, and I'm like, I bet you she got asked that all the time. She goes, "No, it's me."
yeah, okay, there you go. That's branding. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great part of branding is it doesn't have to
No,
be pretty.
accepting your imperfections, uh, you're you will have a harder time accepting your imperfections than your audience will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't that funny? Because oh, he's the big hair guy, right? That's really,
He's the big hair
oh yeah,
guy.
yeah, yeah. I know you're talking about.
No, but the way he talks about a lot of stuff and the way you seem to like him is about and even the guys you talk about, the ex special forces guys you talk about. It's all about getting to that one goal,
Yeah.
right? And I think the problem we've got today is are the goals that we're going for detrimental to society as a whole?
Depends on the goal. That's why you got to be, this is the time to think critically and decide with love and logic, like, what do I think the best thing is to do, right? How can I help that person?
So patriotism to me is something that's kind of dead in the newer generations, in the
Well,
sense that the school, particularly obviously in California, but the schooling tends to center around all the bad things that have happened in the U.S. history,
Yeah, right.
and not about the good things, or if not good things, the positive outcomes that have come out of a lot of the things that have occurred, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Years ago, I might have complained about the fact that the internment of Japanese Americans was kind of a very small part, considering how big it is against the principles of the country.
Yeah.
But nowadays we attack everything U.S. and I grew up, liking to sing patriotic songs. I grew up thinking, all that kind of stuff. And we used to make, obviously this is World War II, they would make patriotic movies and they would have, big moving music in the background. And I
Yeah.
remember one scene with two guys sitting on the tower of a submarine as it goes, and in the background is, "Oh Columbia, the gem of the," and it's so campy, but it served a purpose.
Ah,
And I don't. I think in general, nationalism and patriotism are down in the world overall.
yeah.
But I do think that that's something that to me was a big deal.
It's important. Yeah. Yeah.
And I heard one of the British guys on a podcast this week talking about this, and he was saying when a character like Trump, who's very openly pushy and
Oh,
he
yeah.
states his beliefs, doesn't work in England
Yeah.
because English don't think you should be that character.
Yeah. Right.
It's not that they disagree with the
Yeah.
thought. It's like, no, I'm not going to tell the world how great I am. I just accept that we're a good country and and that's it. And I think a lot of people do want to. I think a lot of your silent majority in America have this viewpoint
Oh my
of
God. Yeah.
America's great. These things are good. We should be helping people. All the things that you and I think are probably the good parts of society are there, but we're taught to internalize them and not talk about them.
Yeah.
And everything that's getting talked about is the noisy stuff that is negative.
Yeah.
So all we feel, we see, and hear is the negative stuff.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And sometimes I get frustrated that I'm like, look, there's so many things wrong with our country, but there's a lot of stuff that's right about it too, right? So if you compare with other countries, we got it pretty good. And a lot of times what I'll do if I'm really angry with somebody, like you hear, especially a really woke person or something, just badgering everything like that. Well, um like, we'll move. If you hate it so much, go.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's the really dick part, about things. But another part that I want to address is the aspirational part of the flag. It's like, listen, you look at the flag, and it's like we are not perfect, but it's an aspiration that we want to be better, right? So every day we're working on making our country just a little bit better. And if we see somebody who's not doing that, then that person should be called out. And I want to say the word suppressed. I probably shouldn't say that, but that idea is not in alignment with our values. And I think if you get away from values, that's a big problem, because then we don't have anything to ground to. We don't have any reason why. We don't have a standard to.
So what is the value?
Well,
So the reason I'm asking this is I've been thinking you've got principles, you've got
yeah,
beliefs, and you've got values. These are
values.
all different aspects of what make you who you are.
And ethics would probably be in there somewhere, right? I mean, that's probably a combination of.
I would assume ethics come from values and principles. I assume it's a mixture of all those things.
Yeah, it's a
And
mix.
then from those things you build your purpose. You build, because those are the things that need to support your purpose.
Well, no, I think the other way around. I think the values come from your purpose, right?
I used to think that. I disagree. I now think that your values, or sorry, your principles, your values, and your beliefs you've built through education, through your parents, through society, through TV, through whatever you've got. You've cobbled together this understanding of the world and the way it works, and you've applied a certain amount of worth to these things, and these are the ones that stick with you. And then from there, you figure out, oh, these are the things that I care about, and therefore the purpose I have needs to incorporate those things I care about.
Oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it.
So this is why I say you can choose your purpose. And it's okay for your purpose to change as you change, as your values and principles and beliefs change over time, your purpose may change over time. And you could say it's because of an event that occurred, or it could just be as I'm older and I have more resources, now I'm able to do things differently than I did before. I'm able to so if your goal is to help people, and some of that is the how, but some of that is the actual purpose itself, right?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna agree with you on that one actually. I'm gonna I think it works both ways. Like I know I used to
I
work.
think I think if you have a purpose from day one, that's going to define everything else. But I don't think that's the average person. I think the average person has to build to a purpose, and they build it from those core things.
Yeah, I think it may work differently with different people actually, because I've talked to some people, they're like, I just knew this is what I want to do from as long as I could remember ago. I knew this is the thing. And
I
that's
bet you
unusual though, you don't see
that's
that.
unusual, but I bet you even if you go to them, they've got principles, values, and beliefs that are already established at that point too.
That's interesting.
Right? I mean, some of the things come from your parents just told you. You
Right.
don't do that. You don't act that way. You respect your elders. You take your
Yeah.
hat off when you go into whatever the heck it is that you were taught. Those things become ingrained in you, whether they make sense or not, whether there's actually a truth or a fact or an experience that goes with it. For whatever reason, you have now incorporated that into you,
You become,
right?
yeah,
And so some of them are like, and I have a hard time sometimes distinguishing between a value and a belief and a principle,
yeah, I mean, yeah, they're definitely related and
right?
interconnected.
Like I tend to believe that people are good, right? So that's a belief.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a true belief.
So
Our
I value. It doesn't have truth has nothing to do with any
okay,
of these
fair
things.
enough, fair enough. That's a good. Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
yeah.
sense.
The exercise of finding truth to reinforce these things is a different exercise, I think.
Well, that's how humans work, right?
Right. But like so I also believe that education is is the best way for a person to rise in society.
100%. Yep, yep.
So that's a belief. But that means I also value education. That means I believe in order to make things fair, everyone needs to have access to a fair to an equal, fair, good education, right? So my principle is that we need to have that the principle is that everyone deserves a fair education. The value is education is worthwhile, and the belief is that no, is it the belief that education is worthwhile and the value? See, so now I'm getting confused. But they're all pieces of the same thing. So when I say I value education, there's a principle back there. There's a value and a belief that goes with that.
This is interesting. This is why I think the Zettelkasting system for this particular thing would be helpful, where you start put stuff up and you start writing, and you're like, no, really, that's, and then all of a sudden you're realizing, wow, how are these things related to each other? And it's like
But
complicated.
this simple idea that can't be explained simply is, I think, the basis for why simple explanations are broken inherently. We all want the simple explanations, but simple is difficult. Simple is hard. Simplicity is simple answers are always really elegant and say so much more than people really realize.
Yeah, man, when you string that right set of words together, people are like, oh, just like jujitsu, you might be trying to implement 100-year-old technique, and man, if you get it right, it just freaking works.
But if you're off by a couple
Oh
centimeters
yeah.
in a particular place, it's not going to work.
If your balance isn't right, if you're not in the right position to execute it, I mean, there's a lot of things that, but that's your failure to implement. That's a different problem.
But the idea to me though is that simplicity is hard, which is why no one does it well.
Yeah, so there's a in my little Navy SEAL class I take, there's he draws a big circle and he goes crossing complexity. So he goes, you got to work and struggle until you get to the other side, then it's the simplest thing in the world. It's like you're like, why did I struggle with this? It's like, of course, right? This is the answer. But it takes a lot of work and effort to get there. And I think you got to use logic to make sure that you're not deluding yourself by your emotions, because your emotions can lie to you.
Well, I think it's not just logic. There's a lot of well, okay, logic is the base, but you talk about branding, you talk about marketing, you talk about all these other skills that are there, right? To make something simple, it has to have meaning beyond its simplicity.
Wait,
And if it doesn't automatically have meaning beyond its simplicity, then you've got to build it through marketing. I'm thinking of like the Got Milk commercials,
yeah.
right? It's a stupid thing, Got Milk. And yet it was very successful because it hit people on a lot of levels. It made people think, oh, yeah, milk was something I was supposed to be drinking when I was young to build strong bones. All the different aspects of milk are are tied to those two words, got milk.
Well, and it's very sticky too. It just is
Yes.
sticky.
But you think about it. There's a huge amount of knowledge that the average person has about what milk is and why it's good for you. We're taught to drink it when it's young. It's got vitamin D. It's pasteurized. All that kind of crap.
Yeah, right.
That is tied to just the idea of milk. Got milk is an idea like, well, I haven't had milk in a while. I don't drink milk anymore. I'm an adult. And so suddenly it started to open up these ideas of childhood, of being a kid, suddenly just in two words, you're able to tie something to someone's background,
Yeah, that's
right?
powerful.
And then you start advertising and you show families and you show kids and you show humor and all that stuff. And now you've tied a whole bunch of stuff
Hmm.
to something that's very simple.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's super
I
powerful.
think that the hard thing is how do you get the simple thing to represent the big thing? Because an effective simple thing, that's the problem with most simple things, is when you simplify an argument to one point, it strips out everything else and gets across the one point, which means all the nuance is lost, which is how political arguments are done, right? They strip out all the nuance and just talk about the one thing.
Yeah,
And what ends up happening is then you make a decision on one thing and all the second order consequences are lost entirely. But if you've put in the effort correctly to build the knowledge and understanding in that simple and simplicity, then it represents more than just what it says.
yeah, no, that's exactly right. That just takes a lot of engineering work to like distill something
It's
down.
hard work, and that's why people don't do it.
Super hard work, actually.
And it may be wasteful, it may be inefficient. There's a whole range about it that turns people off to trying.
Yeah, it's very hard. So when I first started to learn to take pictures, I was trained by a guy named Mark Halper. He's in Los Angeles. And what he gave us was a system to take a photo where you literally put your camera on a tripod, you shoot tethered into a laptop, and it's like you shoot no more than one shutter frame per minute, actually. And he goes, you set it up, you click the button, and you look at the picture for like 40 to 50 seconds. And you have clear intentions like, what do I want people to think, feel from this image? And you constantly look, and is there anything that's taking it away from that or taking my message away from that? And if so, you get that out. And basically what you do is you start removing things until only the essential remain, and there's nothing else that you could do to that picture to make it stronger. He goes, then you're done. And it might take you an hour sitting there. It might be like, man, we got to move that hat just 1 inch up. It just is a little.
I can see that in you though. When we were doing lighting, and you were talking about the shadows behind the ukulele from the light coming this direction. Or
Yes.
today in that one speech when you mentioned her background had curtains and one of the curtains was wrinkled, and that's distracting. And I'm sure everyone saw it, but not everyone saw it.
That's just took many, many years of having really smart people and taking a lot of pictures and going through the critique cycle. Oh, what do you think of this? I mean, and then uh and it was brutal, man. It's freaking brutal. This dude was an asshole. And he's like, "Oh, that huge wrinkle down the shirt, you didn't fucking see that?"
And of course, no, I didn't. It was just a
I
wrinkle in
see
the
it
shirt.
now, but no, I didn't at the time.
But I think that's the point, right? It's like if you so maybe is this the problem with truth is even though it's there, people don't see it?
Oh my God, of course. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe they don't see it because they can't see it. Because in order to see something, you've got to label it, you've got to name it, you've got to understand the essence of that thing.
Huh.
Because if you don't have a word for it, you can't see it. Just like Chris Voss says, you were mentioning it too. The example used. You got to label it, right? We were talking about that, or I was talking about it. Oh, you really seem upset. And I was like, damn right, I'm upset.
No, I'm wondering, it's you mentioned in that background that she had, and she had like the window with the curtains on both sides, and one of the sides was wrinkled. And I'm like, as soon as you mentioned it, yep, there it is. I see it, I'm thinking back. I've seen that background before. I know I've seen that wrinkle before, and it's been there the entire time, and it never really registered as a problem. So I think seeing and understanding are two different things.
Well, see,
It's like,
I went into an analysis mode because I was asked to critique. So I'm like, okay, here's my
but it's people who listen but don't hear,
yes,
people who see but don't recognize.
yeah.
Right? Maybe this is true of all of our senses. Maybe we all have the ability to use the sense and not process what's coming out of
Oh
it.
my God, because you're not trained to use it. Yeah, you can't see until you. I mean, some people can, but the average
Does
person,
this go back to attention? Where you put your attention?
yeah.
I mean,
Where you put your
it's
attention.
part of it is awareness. You are aware of more things because you had that training,
Yeah,
but
years and years of being
but
told
the
like, oh,
awareness allows you to control your attention in a way that I can't in that situation.
yeah, because it's jujitsu, man. I rolled around the mat in photography for like 8 or 9 or 10 years, having really smart. I mean, photographers that are way better than I'll ever be critique me
So
intensely.
how do we translate grabbing that ability or some level of that ability, just an expansion on the average person, into something that they can learn without having to go through that teacher and that training?
I don't think it's possible.
So then,
You got to
in
do the
some
work, you
ways,
know.
what we're trying to build in the way of critical thinking, then, how do you do that? How do you get yourself to be aware of things that you aren't that you see but don't see?
You've got to be shown.
So maybe that's the problem today, right? Is we used to be more open to people showing us things.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
would reserve opinions, we reserve judgment. We would assume that you had something to say of value.
yeah.
Today, I've already got my opinion made by a small group. So for me to be shown something different means I would have to find a group equally respected that could show me something that differs from what I know.
I think,
What happens is we're stuck in our little bubble of whatever group we're in, and the opposite side they come to you reasonable with an explanation, and you're just taught to attack them entirely instead of listening to anything that's being said.
yeah, you're a racist. You're a Nazi, just immediately. I'm like, did
Mhm.
you even hear what I said? It's like, no, they didn't hear, right? No, no.
It shuts down the ability to have critical thinking.
Yes. Oh my God, of course.
So
Yeah.
this is, I mean, you think about people who were in cults and escaped their cults, and they talk about, you know, other people in the cult don't realize the problems they've got.
Yeah, because you can't see it. You're a fish in the water. You don't see the water. And that's why you need to expose yourself to uncomfortable ideas from every different person, right? Not, and hang on, let me rephrase that. This is why I wish I could write this down, but you've got to expose yourself to different ideas and stick with it long enough to at least understand it. And you might, and that's the whole thing, seek first understand, then be understood. I think that's really a good quote, actually. Because here's the thing, right? With that, I've used this technique quite a bit. And here's the thing that here's the number one objection. They're like, oh, if I seek to clarify, that means I'm agreeing with him. I'm like, oh no, man, where did you get that?
Oh, I get the opposite effect
You're not
because
agreeing with anything.
I start asking questions,
Yeah.
and I think I come across as aggressive because people will automatically get defensive.
Yes.
So I'll say, wait, so is this what you mean? Tell me what this is, but whatever. And they will immediately start backing up and get defensive. I'm like, I'm not trying to make any opinion on this. I want to understand what's being said here.
Yeah.
But I find that quite often when I ask for clarification, when I ask for more information, people get defensive.
Yeah. That's why you've got to study Chris Voss. He gives you the techniques, man. He gives you the exact words, the tonality, your body language, because all that stuff matters.
I like how he says his son always flies first class.
I didn't hear that part or whatever. I
Oh,
haven't seen it in a few years, but
he goes off and he goes up to the gate agent or whatever the ticketing agent, and he comes up there with a, oh, I'm gonna sound like an asshole, or I'm gonna be a
yeah,
jerk,
yeah,
or, or whatever, and goes into the whole spiel.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a great technique, actually. And then people are like,
Um,
"Well, you're not really an asshole. I mean, a little bit, but it wasn't that bad, you know." Because what do they call it? You pre-frame it. You like set up the scenario for them. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Well, man, we need to start studying this stuff and practicing this stuff as well too, because this is leadership stuff, you know?
I I was listening to someone talk about Mr. Rogers
Oh,
this
that
week.
dude was a freaking genius,
And they mentioned they mentioned a quote to him, but in the process of looking for that quote, I found this quote and thought of you. Um, there is a close relationship between truth and trust,
man. Oh, yes. Yeah.
and and as much as I shy away from the concept of using the word truth because I think it's one of those words that's loaded in its definition, and what someone says is truth is just beliefs
Yeah,
or just right.
yeah, right.
That's why I like that we use the word facts because facts are something that, regardless of what you believe, it's a piece of information that should be indisputable. I think that's what truth is meant to be in most people's minds. It's an indisputable piece of information is the truth. However, that I think is a lot of people have already extrapolated from facts, and the truth they come up with is some kind of a interpretation of facts.
Yeah, and that's why you gotta the language. Language is so important in there. So I think you should always be asking questions, not is it true or not, but how true is this? I think that's a just you're gonna get a very different answer
Yeah,
if you ask that question.
and so I often ask the question: is how could this not be true?
But see, that's very argumentative, actually.
No, no, but the idea is, what are the scenarios? What are the conditions? What are the facts? What are the edge cases? What are the things that would make this potentially not be a true thing? And usually, by thinking that out, I'm able to say, oh, well, that's a pretty far-fetched idea for it to get to there, or
Yeah,
that would be like a one in a million thing happening. Because everyone always says, most people are blank, and they go, but I know a guy.
yeah, no, of course, there's
Like
always
suddenly that one guy breaks. I didn't say everyone. I said most people. I used the word most, but you didn't listen,
yeah, yeah.
and you decide to argue against that fact. And I'm like, so there's always going to be a guy who breaks the rule.
There's
So I
always
always try to think about what breaks the rule, what breaks the truth, what would contradict this truth.
yeah.
And usually by thinking through that, I'm able to come up with, well, that is unlikely, or I go, that seems more likely. Is this wrong?
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of thinking about it for yourself. If you could just develop the right language and tonality and the right words to move people to that same thought process. But
Yeah.
to do that though, but um they've got to trust you and you've got to have a relationship with one thing. I'm actually trying to help you. I'm not trying to hurt you, you know. Because people are always, oh, here it comes. You know?
Yeah, I think a big part of this is that I think you are your own person and you're going to make your own decision. And if my goal is not to convince you through emotion, my goal is not to convince you through your trust of me. My goal is for you to make a conscious, analytical, logical decision based upon information that hopefully my information helps you to do that. That is what I want to have happen. And so the way I deliver it, okay, and I know this is wrong. The way I deliver this shouldn't be important. The emotion I put into it, the judgment I put into it, the way I look down on you for not having the logic abilities, none of that should actually influence your decision.
It's like, you're so fucking stupid. Do I have to walk you through step by step? That's what they're hearing.
I know, but again, and this is the hardest thing is if you were to take that tone with me, I wouldn't hear that.
No, 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 because that's okay, Chris. And I will do that with you because you and I think incredibly the same way. We're both analytical. And in fact, I wouldn't be upset with you. I'd be, dude, man, thanks.
Well,
I was down the wrong road.
if you were to be insulting him, I'd say, "Well, Dan, that's insulting," and then we'd go on from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and oh, but that butt thing's gonna be hard to break, actually.
It's gonna yes.
And I
So
don't even know
that
what I was thinking. Yeah,
that's what we have to do.
that's what we have to do. And it just comes with practice. It's just over and over and over. And identifying who you're talking to. Because if I know you're analytical, I can use a different approach than somebody who's not analytical. Like my wife is not analytical at all. It's like her thought is I don't give a crap about the airplane. Just I'm gonna set my ass down, bring me some peanuts, and I'm gonna come out in Los Angeles 3 hours later. That's all I care about. I don't care about the altitude, air traffic control, the engines. Don't care. Just I give you my credit card and I get there. That's how she thinks.
Mhm.
That's it. And that's how most people think.
Yeah, no, it's
It sounds to me, Chris, like we should be developing a high dollar course to teach people how to do this across a long period of time, about that we can roll around on the ground, metaphorically, in arguments and discussions and learning to manage emotions so you can think more clearly. Because the first rule in jujitsu is I want to knock you off your game. I'm
so
going to
who's
start. Uh,
I'm thinking who's the target audience? And I'm asking this because I think this is what I said earlier about trying to what is the easiest way to teach someone what you learned in photography from that person,
yeah.
or at least part of it, coming up with whatever lesson or experience or exercise someone needs to do to expand what they see in the world a little bit.
Yes, yes. Well, the way that gets done is you set a very tight box and you work inside this box, right? So when I first started doing headshots, you get one light, you're set up here, there's a brown paper background, and the shot's going to be like this. And that's all you get for right now. And eventually you're going to get really good at doing that. Then we can start doing other sort of stuff. And just constant critique. Just set it up, shoot it. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty. Did you see this? Because one thing I was asking you when I was kind of background, we were setting that up together, is what I wanted to know more than anything is, do you see that? It's like, I don't know if you remember me asking that, but I asked it like 7 or 8 times actually. Are you seeing this? Because I know that if I can get you to see it, now you can reproduce it. Now you're on your own.
So what bothers you right now in the background?
The bother is there's way too much room on the right side. I mean, it's like, in fact, I can't even think barely, actually. If you were to move yourself over, yeah, that's a little better. There we go. That's a little better. But now you got all these tangent issues with see, now we're getting somewhere, except for your watch. You take your watch off because my eye gets drawn, especially with the reflections in it. Yeah. But that's pretty good. That's like pretty good right there, actually. Yeah.
The size of the
Maybe.
gray hat bothers me because it's bigger than the others.
What's that?
The size of the gray hat bothers me because it's bigger than the
Ah, Chris, see, you're seeing. And this is all
others.
about photography, is about seeing. Yeah, you set them up how you want them. That looks pretty good. This hat up here, you're not seeing where in the brown hat you just moved. I feel like that's not the right spot for it. No, the one above. That bugs me. That hat. Can you replace it? Can you swap it with or another one? That's better.
Now, what about the color palette?
The gray, yeah, the gray on the bottom, it feels like it needs to go higher.
Higher or gone?
Can you swap them? The brown one, the one like diagonally swap them? No. Swap them. The gray hat diagonal. Yeah. That's what I want. See, now in my mind, I get messed up because it's bigger. It's like the gray hat looks much.
Size is pretty big.
So you need to keep it more in the background, further away, to make the size balance out.
Yeah, I could go with a totally different hat.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's so beige and so brown though, you know. I like the,
Well, that's my problem. Is all my stuff is beige and brown.
well,
I
like,
got blues and I got other colors in there, but I'm not sure that they're going to come across.
yeah. But this is it, Chris. I'm so excited because you are now seeing, and I can see that your brain is working. Awesome. I got you where I need to be. I got you where I wanted you to be. If we could get people to go through enough critical thinking to start to think through some of these things, we might be able to really give people tools to help them, you know? And vice versa. You know, the challenge with the two of us is we might be able to solve this problem really well, but we're blind around the other 90%. And we need,
We're blind by what we don't know. Yeah.
yeah, we're blind. Where you need to have somebody else come in and say, guy, don't you see that? I mean, don't you see the freaking snake right there? Like,
So,
no, I didn't.
but
No.
that's where the whole idea of critical thinking is. It's a skill set, but it has to go along with perception,
Yes.
attention,
Yes.
and what you'll find is people don't. The average person doesn't have much of either of those.
Yeah, right.
They
Unless
don't
they've
have much critical thinking, and they don't have much attention or perception. I don't know what's the best way to phrase that,
or maybe
but
focus, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
the idea is you need to. Those are the two things you need to expand. You need to expand their ability to question and to reason.
Yes.
And then on the flip side, they need to start seeing things to reason about, to question about.
Yes. Yes.
And so, like when you're talking about the stuff behind me, and you mentioned this, the thing I came across was I had the light over here and the shadows behind here, right
Yeah,
back
right.
here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I see them, but I didn't register them as being particularly good or bad.
Yeah,
But then,
because what's happening is subconsciously, I know that there's multiple lights and the shadows, it's like it doesn't make sense, right? Because it's like you got a light here, you got a light coming in right here. I'm like, what are you doing over there? It's like this is not, there's something
well,
that's off,
so
right?
that got me thinking, like, do I need to put a light behind me and have it go up and try to break the shadows that way and all that kind of thing? So,
No, 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 you don't need to do that. No, 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 no. The problem is you had two lights and you want to add a third to fix the shitty second light. I'm like, no, 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 get rid of the second light and just use one light because you don't have enough knowledge right now to how to mix multiple lights yet because you can't
no,
see enough right now.
and I may never take the time to do that, right? So then, in
You may
which
not care,
case,
that's fine, which is okay.
well, but the idea being that just having the ability to or having it pointed out to see things like that would then get me to think, oh, well, logically, what could I do in this situation? Right now, I've just got the window light.
Yeah,
In the morning when we have our meeting, it's still dark outside. I had to use the room light,
yeah,
but
you had to. I know, I understand. I
I've
got,
been fiddling around with that, trying to get it, saying, okay, if I take it down to 10%, then it only then it's just enough light for whatever impact, right? So,
but then we get into then we talk about qualities of light, softness, brightness, color, temperature. Then it gets a lot of how do I move the light? I mean, do you put a filter over it where it diffuses the light? I mean, then you start getting into a bunch of technical stuff.
well, then I don't like the color of my room and I have to paint it.
Ah, yeah, that's why movie sets they build sets, man. They got set designers and they've got whole teams of people that are putting the lights and creating emotion because all of this creates emotion, and that's what you want to do. How does this make you feel? Right? Is really a logical question, which is kind of crazy, but that matters.
Yeah. I wrote down a bunch of stuff that happened or that came across my mind this week.
Awesome.
Oh,
Let's talk about. I
the
do need to
idea
go in a
of
while, but yeah, let's go.
so I mentioned the reporter Amazon strike thing, which that bothered me. You were talking earlier about
How does that bother you?
it bothers me that a reporter can't understand that people can have two different opinions and not have and still be looking at the same
Okay,
information.
you view it as an error in logic. Yeah, he's not.
I view it as a reporter should have certain skills and they don't have those.
Well, okay. Let me reframe that. It's not a reporter. It's a paid actor.
Yeah, okay, but the idea of okay, it's not a journalist, I guess. It's a
It's not a
reporter.
journalist. It's a paid actor.
But I
Anyway,
expect people who do this for a living to have some level of journalistic ability. That's what.
oh well, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's kind of a real bad assumption, actually.
I forgot where I heard it. They were talking about how we all learn. You were talking about we think linearly,
Yes, yes.
and there was a YouTube video I watched a while back that talked about linear learning is something we learn to do. It's not necessarily a human thing. It's how we learn to think. And the example he gave was they showed a baby or someone really young something that what is the distance between this and the next thing and the next thing or whatever it was, and they were thinking logarithmically. The idea of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wasn't what happened. They did 1, 3, 9 or something like that, or 1, 2, 4. It was a really interesting thing, and it basically, I forgot exactly how they showed it, but they showed like we all learn decimals and we learn thinking, we learn linear thinking, but we're not default linear thinkers. As conceptually, we can actually come up with, if we were to take a child from the start and teach him to think in logarithmic thinking, it could be done. Anyway, it was. I have to go find the YouTube video because I was like,
That,
"Oh my gosh,
no,
that's
that
amazing!"
makes a lot of sense, actually. You know, when I'm going through learning my Greek, I'm at the very beginning stages of it, and I'm
Hmm.
singing the alphabet song, and I'm trying to like, okay, that character is a this. Where I can read English and not even think, it just happens automatically. But when I'm trying to read Greek, it's man, it is a struggle. And I have to go back and remind myself what you just said is that wait, I've been taught for many, many years how to read, and I forgot that I was taught.
It well, but to me, this reinforces the idea. If we all know how to do math because we all learned how to do math, it
Yes.
actually attacks the idea that math is a language, or maybe it reinforces the idea that it's a language that we all know. But it means it's not a universal language the way we keep talking about it, because others would have to understand the same basic principles. They would have to think linearly, not logarithmically. All those things that are like the basis for how we think in math are something we learned, not something that's a truth. And if that's the case, then maybe math is a language and we only have one little dialect of it, right? There's the logarithmic dialect and the linear dialect and the decimals and the hexadecimals, and all these are different dialects and accents in language, and we only know one.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, actually.
And so if you learn to speak a different dialect of math, we may not be able to solve problems together.
Yeah, I think so because like simpler math is that you have area, oh, it's an area of a rectangle, width times height, right? Or whatever the triangle, half the base times the height, or whatever those things. And then you start to get, oh, I need to calculate the area of a curve under this function. And you're like, okay, yeah, give me the formula. And you're like, well, there is no formula for that, right? So there's this thing called calculus. That's what it was designed to figure out. And it's a whole different way of thinking about things. And it's like, yeah, yeah, that's critical. Yeah, yeah.
Well, then you get into quantum mechanics, and you have oh yeah, this theory represents that it could be here, or it could be this, or it could be this. It's like what?
Yeah, and you choose it when you look at it, that's when it decides what it wants to be. And you're like,
And
well,
you need to solve on the idea that it could be either until you put in the information that makes it one or the other.
yeah, which is crazy, right? Like, is
Yeah.
that so
Or
does
is this just our limited way of being able to explain it in our language, in our dialect of math, and that there is a better math that explains it in a way that is consistent and doesn't have all these kind of
oh, I
contradictions.
think absolutely. Yeah, everybody's been, well, I don't want to say everybody, but many people are trying to figure out, I need the one theory of everything. Like somehow, if I have enough understanding, this one thing will be able to describe everything, you
It
know?
sounds like they're moving away from that. You talked about string theory and the idea that more and more people are thinking that string theory is not real or
Yeah,
not.
that I don't understand. You got me. I've heard of it. I don't know much about. I know it's like 11 9 dimensions or something like that. And that's all I know.
Yeah, and I think the idea they had was maybe we've gone too far down this path,
Very
is what
possible.
they're thinking.
Very
And you
possible.
know what? I bet it's true. If everything is a pendulum that swings back and forth,
Yeah.
maybe math and science is too.
Yeah, well, in like who's the guy that crud Newton's laws of motions, which is
Mhm.
fine for if we want a little rocket ship and we just want to move around a little solar system, right? And we don't go too fast. Shit worked perfect, right? But
Yep.
if you start going faster, all of a sudden that doesn't work anymore. Then Einstein came along and said, "Hey, if we you got to
But
think about things
so
different."
there's two questions to ask. Who cares? When you start getting into faster than light, the average person in the world, 99.99% of the people in the world aren't going to care,
Yeah, who cares? Yeah.
right? But then why don't we care? Because if we do care and we figure it out, then comes the technology, then comes the advancements, then comes the better life, then comes everything else. So
Because,
it's
dude, we got so many more things to worry about. I'm just worried about paying my rent. I'm worried about going to work. Or, my car's got a bad tire and I don't know how to pay for it. And it's like that's where my focus is. I mean, I'm not trying to understand the nature of the universe. I'm just trying to get to work, and not go bankrupt in the time. So that's where most people are, right?
yeah, no, it's true.
I mean, the society that we live in right now, we're privileged. We actually get to have first world problems, right? We got to think about, oh my God, the Netflix show that is on, they didn't finish it or whatever.
Oh, God.
It's like
You know,
first world problems. If you're struggling and you're working, there's no such thing as fat people or diabetes or this or that, right? I mean, you're just like, I eat whatever freaking moves.
technology. What was it? Technology is or it's the storage of energy, right? Is
Yeah.
basically what we're talking about, which in energy storage of energy equates to more time for us. More time at work means more productivity. More
Yeah.
time at home means more time to indulge whatever we want. And the
Yeah.
problem is it's gotten yeah. It used to be hard work for you to get enough sugar into your body to get fat. Now
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah. I just paid this obscene amount of money for a new AC unit and heater unit. Freaking awesome, man. It's like so smart. It's like I just kind of tell it, just make it this temp. Oh, I mean, any heater does that, but it's like you just tell it to this and it runs at these varying rates and it circulates air so you don't have cold and hot spots and like
So,
frick.
one of the interesting things to me is like, so yeah, so you run it, it goes through different rooms. Do you have sensors in different rooms and all that kind of stuff too?
No, it just blows the air and it's not
It just
that.
blows air around to make sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to solve problems, and I find it interesting. This is where I don't see a lot of knowledge. This is where knowledge seems to differ from place to place.
Mhm.
I don't know about you. So like my dad lives up in the Northwest, and it gets cold enough there that they've got hot water running through the water pipes all the time.
Oh, it's a done freeze, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah. So it won't freeze. So basically, when the water loops back down to the hot water heater,
Yeah.
and then there's a continual flow, so that you get instant hot water when you turn it
Oh,
on.
see, that's
Now,
nice, man.
I don't care about the ice thing down here, but it would be nice to turn on the hot water and not run through 2 gallons of water to get to the hot water.
No, you're exactly right. Because I know in
And,
my
and so I'm thinking, why don't we know about this down here? And I called a plumber and asked. He goes, "Oh yeah, we can do that." Um, but their solution for it is different than the solution that most places do. That most places, when they build a house, they plumb it and they have a return line coming back from the farthest place in the
yeah,
house.
yeah.
The way they do it here is they would actually force the water into your cold water system. So at the faucet, you have the hot water and the cold water coming in. They pressurize it such that more hot water would come in and push back into the system, so that you would have a return flow that
Oh,
way.
how
And
interesting.
so it's a neat idea, but I'm like, wow, these are all things I'd never heard of. I'm wondering how if the plumbers in my area know this, or is this something all plumbers know, or is it something that's regional, or is this? I mean, these are the kinds of things that I often wonder about the knowledge that we have today. Is this actually being captured somewhere? Does the internet actually have this or not?
I would assume it's knowledge somewhere, but it's so funny because I gripe all the time because it takes exactly 19 seconds for hot water to come to my kitchen. And if I take a shower, it takes exactly 15 seconds to come in there. And and I'll bitch and moan that I have to wait for 19 seconds to
No,
get.
mine's longer than that. I can fill a Home Depot bucket in the shower before the hot water comes.
Oh, that's why you do cold showers then, maybe.
Oh, I've done cold showers and it was fine, but the rest of the family doesn't like that, so I have to take the shower first. Um,
But isn't that crazy how we gripe about I've got to wait? You don't understand, dude, how bad I've got it. I've got to wait 19 seconds to get hot water. And could
Yep.
you imagine somebody 100 years ago doing? It's like, just shut up, shut up.
I've got to go out and pull buckets from the well and dump it into the pot
Build a
and
fire,
get
and
the
I'm gonna do
fire
this.
going.
That's why I only bathe on Saturday nights because it's so much work.
Yeah,
It's,
well, Europeans and many of them didn't bathe for months. So,
yeah,
oh, the other thing, so you know who the guys who made South Park are, right?
yeah, I love those guys. Yeah, yeah,
So I heard them talking about if you're making a story and you've got your bullet points in your story,
yeah,
and you can say and then in between those bullet points, your story sucks. Your
yeah,
story your
yeah,
story needs to be A happened, therefore B happened
yeah.
because see, so it's therefore or because.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense because I hear people telling stories and they're like, and then we went here, and then I did this, and then I got in the car, and then I'm like, ah, I don't care that you got in the car. I just don't care. That's why we cut all that shit out, right? Because you'll see a guy walking up, you'll see a hand on the doorknob, and then next scene will be him in the house. Because you're like, I can fill in the in between. I don't need to see reality. Movies are not reality.
No, but the interesting thing was by saying it this way, it's like if you start to think about your speeches, you start to think about all the points you want to make, the arguments you want to make, it really needs to flow.
Oh, it's got to flow. Yes.
Even today, when you were reviewing the one speech you reviewed, and I'm looking at this, and I was thinking there was so much information in that speech about
Yeah.
health and and
Yeah.
how bad health problems could be caused by all these natural
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I gave her feedback too. I said, take all those things and tell me a story about a guy who's suffering from all those
Yeah,
things.
right, 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 right. Yeah.
Right? And then tell me about why he's getting older. He went to the doctor. He said he has high blood pressure, and he's like, God, I wonder why. He goes, well, he's got stress at work, and actually tell the story about this guy
Yeah.
so that it's not a bunch of facts I'm picking up. I'm actually building in my mind this visual of a guy in the doctor's office getting his blood pressure taken, and all these things just build a picture in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's much more of a instead of an and then it's a this was because of this and could have been because of that and yeah.
That's storytelling. Facts, what do they say? Facts tell, stories sell,
Yeah, yeah.
And another problem is people don't get to the point, man. I don't need all this. Just get to the freaking point.
That's my problem, right? Is like I two things. I don't want to hear the fluff you've got.
Yeah.
So that's why I listen to YouTube at double speed. That's why I listen to books at multiple speeds.
Yeah.
There's fluff in everything that's said. I don't need the fluff.
Yeah.
But it does mean that I don't have more as much time to process what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
That's a different problem. On the flip side, I don't want to take up your time by giving you fluff. So
Yeah.
I give you facts packed so densely
Yeah.
that you only pick up a small percentage of them.
Well, I mean, you got to remember the key in marketing, the key in everything is know your audience, right? So if you're selling just to you, that's perfect. But if you're selling to my wife or somebody else, I mean, she'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I gotta go. You're killing,
Yeah, no, I get it.
you're killing me."
Oh,
And you're
yeah.
like,
So
"Wait a
that
minute. I've taken all this time and I'm giving you all this beautiful information." You're like, "I don't care. I don't care." In fact, it's like more than I don't care. You're torturing me right now. Freaking awesome.
but yeah, that's the thing is like if someone says you need to strip it down to the 1 point or even the 3 points,
Yeah.
that is it's like I have to interpret the 15 facts that I have
Yes.
or the 15 pieces of information and I have to figure out the best three.
Yeah.
Best being what
Yeah.
best
You
in
gotta
what way I
filter.
don't.
You gotta edit. Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just being lazy.
No. No.
That's
And so this is where I have a fundamental issue. If I were in the audience, I want the 15 facts and I'll put together in a way that's arguable, that I can defend, that I understand, that I'll take to my grave what is the most valuable aspect of what you've told me.
yeah. Yeah.
I will put together the top three, the top one. I'll rank them in order, whatever. That is me.
Yeah.
So if you don't give me the opportunity to use my brain, you're stripping me of my skill set.
Well, and that's fair
Yeah,
enough, but we're only
right?
10% of the audience, though.
Agreed. So I've got to accept the fact that the audience is going to get a substandard experience out of my knowledge and do my best to interpret for them in a way that they can absorb as much as possible.
Well, and you're making a lot of assumptions, substandard, not according to them. Their thought is, why do you have to tell me 15 things? Why don't you just do the work for me? You're just a lazy dude, right? That's what they're thinking. And you're killing me and you're wasting my time.
Hmm. No, I understand what it's saying, but if my idea is here's perfection
Yeah,
for
for
the
you,
people that
right?
can work with it and figure it out, anything less than that is not perfection. So
Yeah,
coming to the idea that there's perfect for a lesser audience,
yeah.
for an audience with a different skill set, and lesser is not the
Perfect
right word,
for them. Yeah, right, exactly.
is a tough bean for me to swallow, considering I know there's more, I know there's better, I know that it can be better, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, but
so then it's like, do I get a second chance at this, right? Because then there's the idea of if I'm giving you one dump, you're getting everything. If I've got ten chances to talk to you, I can spoon feed you.
yeah. But see, traditionally, you don't want to do that. You don't want to overwhelm. You want to give people just enough where they want to come to you, right?
Actually, I don't want them to come to me.
Well,
I want them to be independent and smart and able to do this on their own. I want
yeah,
to clone myself, not be the guy who has to explain everything every time.
yeah. We really need to get a guest. We need to keep talking. I gotta go. We need to
Yep.
keep talking about it. We need to start getting guests on the show too, with different mindsets, different thoughts, actually. I think
You can
that
work on their lighting too. You can say, "Hey, your lighting sucks."
feeling sucks, man. Um, who should we have just come on the show? Let's first of all, oh crud. The guy, I can't remember his name now. I'm sorry. The coach, Coach B. He would be
Coach
good
B,
to have. He would be good to have. I mean, Clement would be an interesting guy, I
Clement
think.
would be an interesting guy to bring up. Yeah.
We should bring other
Uh,
people on the
I
show.
think Dan. I see. I think there's a
Oh,
lot of
Dan would
people.
be really good.
Dan would be good. Oh, Andrew's. I've talked to Andrew a few times. He's good to talk to. I like talking to Andrea a lot. She's really, because I'm technically her mentor in the club, and but I think one of the things we'll want to do is figure out if there's an area we want to talk about. So like with her, we can go on and on for hours on gut health and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's really interesting. And in fact, I wanted to reach out to her because I'm thinking she may have information that could be helpful for me because I have a lot of the problems. I
Well,
don't think.
she's also got a side hustle, I think, where she's trying to build a brand for health.
Oh,
More aimed towards women, but I mean the idea is, yeah, she's trying to build a brand that actually has, I think she's right now she's working with cosmetics, but she's also working on things for gut health and stuff like that as well.
that's a big thing.
So
That's a
that might be an interesting person to talk to, and you can talk about the brand building and all that other aspect
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, the marketing that would be good. Yeah, we got to let's start bringing
And,
up.
and her background's marketing too, so she's an interesting person to talk to
Okay,
from that.
perfect. That's awesome. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
talk about marketing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be cognizant of, we tend to delve into any topic we don't care about.
No, and we got to let her know that okay, this is free form, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, but that's where you got to read your audience, and if she's starting to
Yeah.
get comfortable or not talking, then it's like okay, we got to make her feel comfortable. Because I think the first thing, if we bring a guest on, for me, the most important thing is they feel safe and heard. Because if we can get people to feel comfortable and feel safe, then we're going to get way better information, right? They're not going
Yeah.
to be
No,
trying to.
I think that's true. Yeah. So, yeah, I got someone knocking at my door. So,
Okay,
if you need to go, then
so
let's
we're going
let's
to
get
wrap it
together
up
next week.
then.
Yeah, if you want to ping me on anything, let me know.
Okay, I will. Okay, Chris, this is it. End of our fourth thing right before Christmas. Yeah, Christmas is next week, so it's awesome.
Yeah, and you're going to be here next week, right? So,
Yeah, I'm gonna come down Thursday, Friday. I already called Alan Goes up so we can go out to lunch with him at some point.
okay, yeah, let me know timing on stuff then.
Yeah, definitely probably Thursday or Friday after Christmas. So
Okay, cool.
okay, man, that's it. We'll
Thanks.
okay, see you later. Bye.
See you later. Bye bye.